Classmates bully Barron Trump for his clothes. Then they discover his secret, Barron. Trump walked into the school hallway, his tall frame making him stand out among the crowd. But instead of admiration, all he got was snickers and whispers. His clothes weren't what the other kids expected. No designer labels, no flashy shoes, just a simple hoodie and jeans that looked ordinary. For someone whose last name was Trump, that didn't sit right with his classmates. "Hey, Barron, did your dad finally cut you off?" One kid sneered, as a small group of students burst into laughter. Another one chimed in. "What happened? Lose a bet or something?" Barron didn't react. He kept his head down and walked past them, ignoring their jeers. He had heard comments like this before, but today they felt sharper. Maybe it was because he wasn't in the mood to deal with it. Or maybe it was because they didn't know the truth, the real reason behind his choice of clothes. The taunting didn't stop in the hallway. At lunch, a few classmates made sure to sit close enough to make their voices heard. "Seriously, dude, where's the Gucci? Where's the Rolex?" one of them said mockingly. Another one nudged his friend and whispered just loud enough for Barron to hear. "Maybe he's trying to be normal." Too bad it's not working. Barron took a bite of his food, refusing to give them a reaction. He had learned that responding only gave bullies what they wanted. But what they didn't realize was that their assumptions were way off. His clothes weren't about money or status. There was something much bigger behind his decision. Something they would never expect. The comments didn't just stay in the cafeteria. Later that day, in the locker room before gym class, the whispers turned into something louder. A few boys surrounded Barron's locker, blocking his way. "Come on, man, just admit it," one of them said, crossing his arms. "Are you broke or just trying to make a statement?" Another one smirked. "Or maybe you're hiding something," he added, his voice dripping with suspicion. Barron sighed, knowing they wouldn't let it go. He could feel their eyes scanning him, waiting for a reaction, waiting for him to crack. But instead of answering, he simply grabbed his gym shirt and turned to walk away. That's when one of them reached out, grabbing his hoodie. "Let's see what you're really hiding," the kid said, pulling it off. And that's when everything changed. The room went silent. The laughter stopped. Their faces went from smug to stunned in an instant. They finally saw the truth, and it was nothing like what they had imagined. What they discovered left them speechless, and suddenly they weren't laughing anymore. For a moment, no one moved. The locker room, usually filled with chatter and laughter, had gone dead silent. The boys who had been taunting Barron just seconds ago stood frozen, their eyes locked on what they had just uncovered. The hoodie, now in one of their hands, was completely forgotten. Barron didn't say a word. He just stood there, his expression uncalm but unreadable. He could see the change in their faces, the confusion, the shock, the dawning realization that they had just messed up. One of the boys took a step back. "Wait, what?" he muttered under his breath. Another one looked around, as if hoping someone else could explain what they were seeing, because underneath that hoodie, Barron wasn't wearing a simple t-shirt like they expected. Instead, he was wearing something that none of them could have predicted, something that completely flipped the way they saw him. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about being rich or poor. It was something much deeper. One of the boys finally found his voice. "Dude, why didn't you tell anyone?" His tone wasn't mocking anymore. It wasn't teasing. It was something different now. Maybe even a little guilty. Barron just sighed and shook his head. "Because it's none of your business," he said, his voice even, but inside, he was exhausted. He had known this moment would come eventually. He had known that people would find out, But he hadn't expected it to happen like this. The boys, who had spent the past few weeks whispering behind his back, making comments about his clothes, suddenly didn't know what to say. It was like all the power they thought they had over him had disappeared in an instant. One of them finally managed to speak. "Is that real?" he asked, his voice quieter now. Barron didn't respond. He just gave him a look, one that made it clear that this wasn't a joke, that this wasn't something he did for attention. Another boy, the one who had yanked off the hoodie, swallowed hard. He looked down, suddenly unable to meet Barron's eyes. He had been the loudest one, the one who had pushed the hardest, and now he felt small. Barron didn't need their pity. He didn't need their apologies. He had made his choice for a reason that none of them could understand. But now they wanted to. The rumors spread fast. By the time the last class of the day rolled around, almost everyone in school had heard about what had happened in the locker room. The whispers had changed. No one was making fun of Barron anymore. Instead, they were trying to piece together the truth. Some said he was part of something secret. Others said he had been hiding this for years. A few even started to wonder if they had completely misunderstood him from the start. And for the first time, the kids who had spent so long judging Barron for what he wore started to realize something maybe they had never really known him at all. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. Because what they had discovered was only part of the truth. And soon, they would learn the rest. And that would change everything. The whispers didn't stop. If anything, they only grew louder. By the next morning, it seemed like every student in school had an opinion on Barron Trump. The boy they once teased for his simple clothes was now at the center of a mystery they couldn't figure out. The same classmates who had mocked him were suddenly looking at him with curiosity, some with guilt, others with admiration, and a few still with doubt. But Barron didn't care about the rumors. He wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. Still, as he walked into school, he could feel the stares, the quiet conversations that stopped as soon as he passed by. He kept his head down, walking to his locker, but he already knew what was coming. One of the boys from the locker room, Jason, the one who had yanked off his hoodie, stepped forward. His usual smirk was gone. Instead, he looked unsure, like he wasn't sure how to start. "Hey, Jason hesitated. "Listen, about yesterday." Barron didn't respond, just shut his locker and waited. Jason scratched the back of his head, glancing at the other kids watching nearby. "I didn't know," he admitted, his voice lower now. "None of us did." For the first time, the teasing had been replaced with something real, maybe even respect. The other boys, the ones who had laughed the loudest, stood awkwardly behind Jason. They weren't laughing now. Barron could have called them out. He could have reminded them how quick they were to judge, how easily they assumed things about him just because of his last name. But he didn't. Instead, he just shrugged. "It doesn't matter," he said. And in a way, he meant it. Because the truth was, he had never cared about their approval. He had never needed them to understand why he dressed the way he did, why he chose to stay quiet when others would have spoken out. But now, they knew, and it changed everything. Word had spread about what was under that hoodie. A simple, worn-out t-shirt from a charity organization Barron had been quietly supporting for years. It was a foundation helping kids in need, providing food, clothes, and education to those who had none. It was something Barron had been passionate about for a long time, but he never talked about it. He didn't need the attention. He wasn't doing it for recognition, but now, everyone knew, and suddenly, the kids who had mocked him for wearing cheap clothes were faced with the truth. Barron had been making a choice to put his money where it actually mattered, instead of showing it off. The realization hit hard. The same classmates who had laughed at him now felt something different, shame. Because while they had been focused on status and brands, Barron had been doing something bigger than any of them, and he never once bragged about it. One of the girls from his class, Sarah, stepped forward. "That's actually really cool," she admitted. Others nodded, some awkwardly shifting on their feet, realizing how wrong they had been. Barron just gave a small smile. "It's not a big deal," he said, and to him it wasn't, but to them it was. By the end of the day, the teasing had completely stopped. The kids who had once been so focused on labels and expensive outfits were now questioning their own choices. Some even looked up the foundation Barron had been supporting, curious to know more, and for the first time, they saw him not as Barron Trump, the rich kid, but as someone who had been doing something meaningful all along. As Barron walked out of school that afternoon, hoodie back on, he noticed Jason and his friends watching him. But this time there was no mocking, no whispered jokes, just quiet respect. Jason called out, "Hey, Barron." Barron turned, waiting. Jason hesitated, then nodded. "That was cool. What you doing?" Barron gave him a small nod in return. "Thanks." And with that, he walked away. He didn't need to say anything else, because in the end, the truth had spoken for itself.